Today we will continue the discussion about the contraceptive methods. So after this point we have discussed about those hormonal pills. What are the hormonal pills? Number one, there were those pills which you have to take regularly, that is the regular combined contraceptive pills. There are some progesterone only pills, and again there is a kind of hormonal device that can be implanted, that is the injectable contraceptives. Depo-provera or dipomedroxyprogesterone is the main drug which is used for those long-acting hormonal contraceptives. Another type of contraceptive that is known as emergency contraceptive. These emergency contraceptives, they are always, as the name suggests, they are for emergency purposes. They should not substitute the regular contraceptive practices. So what are the emergency contraceptives? They are also known as morning after pill, common general term morning after pill, because these contraceptives usually are used post intercourse, where either the contraception has failed, like in case of condom failure or something like that, mixed contraceptive pills, regular contraceptive pills, or in case of forced intercourse like rape or something like that, sexual assaults. So in those cases you require to give these emergency contraceptive pills, which are to prevent any kind of pregnancy due to these misadventures. So normally the usual recommendation for emergency contraceptive is medroxy, levonorgestrel, or mainly the levonorgestrel or diastole. These are the main ingredients for emergency contraceptive pills. As you can see, this levonorgestrel, it is also a component for the regular combined contraceptive pills. Levonorgestrel, it is a congener of progesterone, and what it do, it usually prevents the sperm penetration, it usually prevents the implantation of the fetus. So these levonorgestrel containing pills are the main emergency contraceptive pill. They should be consumed as early as possible of the misadventure, or maximum up to 72 hours. What other options you have got? You can insert a intrauterine device. So levonorgestrel or IUD, none of them will prevent the ovulation, none of them will prevent the fertilization, but they will prevent, most importantly, they will prevent the implantation of the trophoblast. So levonorgestrel and intrauterine devices are the options as the emergency contraceptive pill. But you must remember, these are not regular methods or regular substitution for regular contraceptive practices. Now let's get into the intrauterine devices. IUD, that is intrauterine devices. So what are the intrauterine devices? Intrauterine devices usually are subclassified into three types. Number one, the first generation that does not contain any kind of active pharmacological substances. These are usually a plastic loop kind of thing which is implanted inside the uterine cavity, and as they are foreign bodies, they will exert a strong inflammatory reaction inside the uterine cavity, and so there will be hampered implantation. So this kind of things, they are known as the first generation inverter devices. Classical example is LiPass loop. It was a S-shaped substance. Okay, end were attached with a couple of rope. So in its active form, it is inserted inside the uterine cavity. If it is the uterine cavity, it will be inserted inside the uterine cavity, and in the uterine cavity it will exert its action by producing some non-specific inflammations, and these cords, those strings, they will be dangling down from the cervix. It should be checked regularly to secure the presence of the loop inside the uterine cavity, and also if you require to remove the thing, you just hold these ropes and pull it down. So it was the method. But these days, this first generation LiPass loop, they are obsolete. They are not used as regular as it was done previously. The second generation, they were the copper containing things, copper containing devices. So their classical example is the copper T. So copper T, it is usually a T-shaped device, and again in this case, all these three leaves, here you will find the copper, here you will find the copper, and also in the vertical limb you will find the copper, and lowermost end, that is attached with another set of strings which will be dangling out of the cervical canal. Now this thing, you can see this is quite a shape which cannot be inserted easily through the cervix. So what you can do, we usually, these things come as a pre-filled pack of, you will get a tube, long tube like this. You get the copper T inside it, folded like this. You will get the folded copper T. And its string will be dangling down, and again you will get a plunger out here. So plunger, it is for the easy insertion of the copper T. Just remember that you never push this plunger to expel this copper T. Copper T expellation should be done by pulling this hollow tube. So how it is done? What we do, we usually, if this is the cervix, if this is the uterine cavity and this is the cervix, what we do, we usually put this tube up to here inside the thing. Then we usually fix the plunger. We fix the plunger at a one point, and what we do, we usually pull this tube downwards. So what will happen? That copper T will go out. Okay, and its arms which were folded previously, it will expand, so that it will remain in situ, as the cervical canal is quite small for copper T to get out. So string will be dangling downward and copper will be released from this copper containing devices. What is the regular advices? The female must regularly check these strings. If the strings are not found, urgent check USG should be done whether the copper T is in situ or not, and then you have to remove the copper T. Usually a copper T, depending upon its character, like if it is a copper T 380, its lifetime will be about 5 years. If it is a copper T 320, its lifetime will be about 3 years. Accordingly, this string is regularly checked. After its life is over, by pulling this string downwards, this copper T is removed. Now remember that all these copper containing devices, their mechanism of action is very simple. They will just release this copper periodically for over a period of time, and that ionized copper they will exert a certain inflammatory reaction within the uterine cavity, and that will lead to the environment hostile enough for those freshly formed trophoblast or zygote to implant. So most of them, they are not ovulation preventers, but they are always implantation preventers. Now this copper containing device, or this first or second generation, both of this type of IODs, what they do, they usually exert a inflammatory reaction in the uterine cavity. So that is why PID, chances of PID, pelvic inflammatory disease, chances of infection, it is quite high with these devices. Secondly, there is high chance of dysmenorrhea, there is high chance of painful menstrual bleeding, as well as there is high chance of heavy bleeding, that is known as menorrhagia. So all these IODs, they have the tendency to exert PID, they have the tendency to make periods painful, that is dysmenorrhea, and there will be heavy periods, that is known as menorrhagia. So these are the major disadvantages for which these copper-Ts or this Lippus loop, they are removed very frequently. Now this is the latest thing. These two things are quite cheap. You can see this thing not used these days, but second generation, these copper containing devices, they are quite cheap, but most effective, most convenient, and most less painful thing is the third generation devices, which are hormone containing devices, but their main restraint is they are very, very costly. So what these hormone containing devices think? So if you can remember the regular copper T, this is a regular copper T, you will get a horizontal stem, you will get a vertical stem, lower down there will be the strings. For copper Ts, these stems would have been carrying the coppers, but in this case, these stems, they will be carrying some hormonal depot preparations. So these preparations, this thing, they will be filled with hormones, particularly sustained release levonorgestrel. So that sustained release levonorgestrel, when they are released in regular period, they will again make the environment hostile enough for preventing the implantation. And also, as there is high level of progesterone level inside the body, what will they do? They may reduce the bleeding, that is, they may reduce the menorrhagia, and also due to their feedback mechanism, they will prevent the LH surge, so also ovulation may be depressed. So this third generation hormone containing intrauterine devices, they are the most effective, most convenient thing to use, but unfortunately they are quite costly. So that is why it is not used very frequently up till this day. Again, the insertion procedure is same. You just load the thing, you go inside the uterine cavity, you pull the body tube backward, keeping the plunger at position. So this device, this T-shaped device, will go out and will lodge inside the uterine cavity, and this tail will be dangling from the cervical canal. This extra tail, that should be trimmed up till convenient length, and regular basis checking is done to confirm the presence of this device inside the uterine cavity. And after a certain period of time, when its life is over, it is about 5 to 6 years. When this 5 to 6 years is over, we just hold this string and we just pull it downward to remove the thing. So these are the intrauterine devices mainly used these days. Now we have discussed up till this point natural methods, barrier methods, hormonal methods, these intrauterine devices, and you can see all of them, when they are discontinued, when they are discontinued, chance of pregnancy will return eventually. So these are not the permanent methods. So what are the permanent methods? Permanent methods are two types: male permanent methods and female permanent methods. For the male, it is the vasectomy, and for the female, it is the tubectomy. Now, vasectomy can be of two types, that is minimally invasive type and another open vasectomy. In case of tubectomy, again also it can be two types: open tubectomy and laparoscopic. So what is done? All of you know by this time. This is the uterus. This is the testis. This is the vas deferens, and again there is the spermatic cord. And this spermatic cord will go through the inguinal canal and then deep inside the abdominal cavity. So if you do a minimal incision here at the side of testis and cut through this spermatic cord, that will render the passage of sperm from this production site to the internally of the body for the ejaculation impossible. So this method, cutting the spermatic cord, is known as the vasectomy. And in case of females, if this is the uterine cavity and this is the fallopian tube, if you cut this fallopian tube, this will be known as the tubectomy. Now remember that as there is presence of black testis barrier, testis production the sperm, that sperm will never come in contact with the blood. So for that reason, as the sperm does not come in the contact with the blood, so though the germinal cells, they are haploid cells, they are foreign to our human body, human diploid cells, there is not any presence of anti-sperm antibody. But in case of vasectomy, you are breaching the black testis barrier. So that is why there is a high chance of some sperms coming into contact with the blood. So there will be formation of anti-sperm antibodies inside the male subject. So what will happen? Say due to some reason you want to recanalize the channel. There will be presence of some antibodies. So this recanalization process will not be that successful. So that is why post vasectomy recanalization is not quite successful enough. But in case of tubectomy, as you are cutting the tube, so you are not exposing the ovum to normal blood. So what will happen? If you recanalize this procedure, the chances of success is much more than this recanalization of vasectomy procedure. Now both these procedures, they are permanent. Usually reversal or failure is very less, but it is not uncommon. There are some failure rates because spontaneous recanalization of the fallopian tube or this spermatic cord, it is not common, but it is not also unheard of. So spontaneous recanalization can occur, so that might lead to failure of this procedure. Another one thing important, usually our body stores sperm for about 30 ejaculations. So after the vasectomy procedure, if somebody goes for intercourse, unprotected intercourse, there is high chance of fertilization. So up till there is 30 ejaculation, one male partner, vasectomized male partner, must use some other contraceptive methods to prevent the pregnancy. So that's it. Let's discuss about a few situations where, say you are a doctor, you have to take the decision which kind of contraceptive you want to give this very person. So number one, first situation, that is a young couple, married obviously, no other comorbidities present, does not want a baby just now, want birth spacing. And nulliparous, that is previously they do not have any baby. So what will be your contraceptive of choice? So young couple, nulliparous, so possibly IUD you cannot go for. They want just birth spacing, so that means they want their fertility to be kept intact. So you cannot go for any kind of permanent method. No comorbidity, so this very person, they are quite fit to get any kind of hormonal treatment. And one thing to be remembered, a young couple, when they are more concerned about birth spacing, there should be some method which is very highly successful and does not require a lot of motivations. Why young couples, they possibly will have a lot of unplanned, unprotected sex. So in this very case, best recommendation to be done is to go for a hormonal contraceptive. Particularly if the person can go through that, if the person is modified, if he is quite knowledgeable, if he is quite ready to go for that oil, combined oral contraceptive pills will be the best option for this very couple. Otherwise, if this couple are not that much motivated, one can go for injectable contraceptions. So that is the levonorgestrel depot form. Now go for the second situation. A young couple with no comorbidity want birth spacing, but eventually they have one baby. They want a gap for say 2, 3 or 4 years. So in this very person, hormonal contraceptive might be a option, as there is no comorbidity and they are young. But possibly if the baby is very small and the person is breastfeeding, possibly oral contraceptive pill, that is a combined pill, they will not be very good options. So if the person is breastfeeding, you can go for, first preference will be progesterone only pills. But progesterone only pills, they are negative effects, that they must be taken in proper time, proper duration, and there must be there are the chance of breakthrough bleedings and all those things. So that is why progesterone only pill if the person is breastfeeding. If not, one can go for combined oral contraceptive pills. But if this person is not motivated enough, if she forgets to take the pill in regular basis, so what you can offer? You can offer for any kind of IUDs. Intrauterine devices might be a good option, because as she have got a baby, possibly her cervix is already dilated a little bit, so inserting a IUD will not be much of a problem. Now you get a condition where the couple is young, there are comorbidities, and they want birth spacing, they have one baby. So in this case, as there is comorbidity, they want birth spacing and they have got one baby, always your option will go for a intrauterine devices, nothing else. Any kind of hormonal preparation might jeopardize this person's regular life, because hormonal contraceptive pills, in case of a comorbid patient, can lead a lot of things like liver damages, there might be atherosclerotic changes, and all these things you have to consider. So IUD, possibly the second generation IUD, will be the best option for a young couple with comorbidity who wants a birth spacing and already have a viable baby. But if in this case they do not have any baby. So if the subject is nulliparous, the best possible option should be the barrier method. So best possible option should be the barrier method, like condoms with spermicidal jellies or diaphragm or something like that. Now you get a older couple. You get a older couple. They want birth spacing. They have got one child. So older couple possibly might have some underlying comorbidity. They want just birth spacing. They have got one child. So possibly they are planning for a second one. So you want to give them a break. So in this case, your best bet will be intrauterine contraceptive devices. Best bet. Because older couple, possibly there will be some kind of underlying comorbidity. You cannot check everything for our older couple who have come to you for a kind of contraceptive advice. You cannot go to check for his liver, his heart and all the conditions. So that is why this very person is a very good candidate for IOCD insertion. But if they have completed the family, if the couple older, no known comorbidity, no known I am saying, not saying they do not have any comorbidity, you don't know it, they want effective contraceptive and their family is completed. So your best option will be ask them to go for a permanent method. Why older couple? You should not go for any kind of hormonal devices because you don't know about their comorbidity. They want a very specific, the target is very specific, they want just contraception, their family is completed. So they should not be dealing with the comorbidities of intrauterine contraceptive devices. So for them it's best to go for the permanent methods. Now you get, say, this is the condition, you get a young couple who want birth spacing, this family is completed, no known comorbidities. So for again, their primary is they want effective contraception, their family is completed. So permanent method should be used there. But if in this case, young couple, that is non-married, no known comorbidity, they do not want a baby, due to any reasons. Say they are not married yet, so they do not want a baby, but they are frequent in having sex. So they frequently having sex. So what you will do? You will ask them, you want a permanent, you want a very reliable method, you do not want a permanent contraception, they are young, so they cannot be able to bear up a baby. So in this case, ideal should be oral contraceptive pills in this case, as they are frequent in sex. But if they are not that frequent, non-frequent, so seventh condition is non-frequent sex, young couple, no comorbidities, they do not want a baby because of any kind of other reasons, maybe the patient have got heart problem, whatever it is. They do not want a baby and they are non-frequent in sex. Say a soldier who is staying at other places comes infrequently to visit his or her girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever. So in that case, what will you ask? The best option for them should be going for a barrier method, right? Because they are non-frequent. So as all of you know, all kind of hormonal methods or other methods what we have discussed already, they have got their some side effects, but barrier method, they are almost side effect less. So in that case, when they are infrequent, for them barrier method should be ideal. Obviously they have to stick to the barrier method very strongly. All the recommendations they have to check for it, and they should always go for emergency contraceptive pill if the barrier method has failed. If there is any kind of barrier breach, they should always go for a emergency contraceptive pill. Now, last but not the least, a young girl rape victim or failed contraception regular method, possibly can't afford a baby, if it is a rape victim, you can understand the mental trauma. So possibly she will not be liking to bear up a baby from that very person who have tortured her so much. So in this case, what will you ask? What will you do? Obviously, your option will be emergency contraception. So again, emergency contraception, you have got two options. If this is a rape victim, that is a young girl rape victim, she will like to go for a regular life in future. So for her, obviously the best option will be going for a oral contraceptive pill. Like I have already discussed, those emergency pills containing the levonorgestrel. But if the person is multiparous, that she has got a baby previously, and possible contraception option is also not impossible for her, so one can go for, say in case of failed contraception, so you can go for insertion of an intrauterine contraceptive device. IUCD might be a good option for that very person. So I have discussed almost all the situations as clinician you might encounter. Now this is again, these days there is again another thing that is known as cafeteria approach. What does that mean? If you go to a big cafeteria, they will just show you the menu. This you have, this you have, this you have. Then you will choose it, whatever you want to eat. For contraceptions also, cafeteria approach has been taken. As a clinician, you might give them the option that this and this and this can be done for you. These have got this and this side effects, and then finally your patient will decide, your client will decide what he or she want to take from that very cafeteria. So finally the decision what the contraceptive practice they will practice, it will be up to the patient himself or herself or couple both. Your option only will be giving them chance what they can adapt or what they cannot. So this goes your contraception.